Hi, I'm Kim Denyas, and I'm a spiritual director. What is a spiritual director? That question kind of comes to me many times in my life. For the past 10 years, I've been one, so I've heard that question and I've heard myself try to answer it. And I thought it might be helpful if I spent a few minutes trying to explain as best I can what I think a spiritual director is. So, a spiritual director is an ancient spiritual practice, first of all. Meeting with a spiritual director, meeting with someone trained in modern days, someone who's living a life that is Christ-centered. For me as a Christian, that would be what I would hold up as important. I want to just kind of look back and say our spiritual roots as Christians are really based in a collective story. Think about that for a minute. Our roots as Christians are based in a collective story. One of those stories, of course, is the Bible. Whether it's Old Testament, New Testament, the individuals in the Bible. If we look at Jesus, our collective story is that we are a belief system based on wounds. He was wounded for our transgressions, the text tells us. Our collective story is death and resurrection. Our collective story is grace, love, forgiveness, freedom. That's a collective story. In that collective story, we have an individual story. You and I have both experienced life. Its unfairness, its harshness, its loveliness, its grace. And as we've experienced our lives, I hope our lives have led us into a deeper faith. Of course, that's not always the case. If we don't have those that can walk with us as we're struggling or as life is difficult, we may not end up in the right place as far as God's concerned. We may end up distant or angry or with dirty pain that we leak all over the place. Several people have said it. Richard Rohr generally gets credit for you either transform your pain or you transmit it. And I think that's exactly where spiritual director can come in. Pain comes into our lives. Maybe it's an unexpected loss, a loss that's out of sync with generations. Maybe it's more an ambiguous loss, the kind of things like not being able to have children, disappointment in a job opportunity or a career path. All those things can be ambiguous losses and are best served in our lives in communion with someone, in community. From the beginning, God looked at humans and named that we don't do well alone. I just have often said we're just not built for anything but community. We're not built to do this work alone. So spiritual direction takes and allows you to bring your story to someone who's trained, someone trustworthy, someone highly confidential, and explore your understanding of God in that setting. So you and God are met where you and God are. It becomes a story for me to which I listen and I watch for the patterns and the love of God that maybe you might miss because you're busy looking at another bit of your life. It doesn't happen alone. You know, we are both the body of Christ together, and we are individuals who are the hands and feet of God. It's that paradox. It is that both that we are part of and yet individuals. And my training allows me to sit with the individual as well as small groups, but most of my work is with individuals. And just kind of the nuts and bolts of it. How do I find a spiritual director? That's usually the first question. How do you find somebody like that? So I'm going to post a few sites you can take a look at. Of course, my own. But there's one called sdicompanions.org. That's very helpful. It's got a beautiful tool in it for searching for a spiritual director. And then there's another one called shepherdsheartconsulting.com. And this is one that really focuses on ministers, which is kind of my call. I work with everyone, but as being raised in the ministry, my father was a minister all my life, I feel like I have a unique place or a unique understanding. I sat on the front pew, literally and figuratively, watching church, and so I have that deeper understanding. And Shepherd's Heart has other people like myself that can speak to the minister's need for spiritual journey and spiritual direction. So that's a good way to find one. Word of mouth is an excellent way of finding a spiritual director. The lovely thing right now with the technology we have is I can serve people around the world, and I'm delighted to do so. I jump time zones and continents, and it's lovely. Years in ancient times, of course, or even a few years ago, we had to meet face to face or on the phone only. But of course, with the power of the internet, we can be face to face. So you can journey with people. You can journey with a spiritual director who's not in your area or someone who is in your area. The other things that generally you're with a spiritual director anywhere from 50 to 60 minutes. And another question people ask me is, how frequently do I come? Well, it depends where you are. Depends what you need. I've had people do an intensive spiritual time with me where we've met daily. I've had people that come weekly. Not for any other reason that they view this as part of their spiritual discipline in God. Just like perhaps you read your Bible and pray daily, they incorporate this as part of their spiritual practices. For the most part, I would say generally people come once a month. I personally am in spiritual direction. I too have a spiritual director. If I could, I'd meet with him every 2 weeks. But he's very busy, and I can get with him every 3 to 4 weeks, so I am there faithfully. Spiritual directors are always in spiritual direction themselves. So the meeting, you come in, we settle in, we generally have either some transition, some quiet, sometimes people light a candle, and you bring what is on your heart. Where have you and God been? What is... maybe what's hard, what's harsh, what's reared its ugly head that you thought was taken care of and suddenly is back. Those are the types of things that are great conversation with spiritual directors. Some denominations, the Mennonites especially, ordain their spiritual directors. In the Roman Catholic tradition, I believe most priests are trained to be spiritual directors. In the Protestant area, we kind of lost spiritual direction when the Protestant movement came along. And pastoral care and spiritual direction are not the same thing. They're very close friends, but they are not the same. Pastors are not necessarily going to be able to give everyone in their congregation the time that spiritual direction takes. So that said, trying to think what other questions are asked of me. Certainly, I would say, pay. Yes, people want to know what it costs. So there's a couple ways. You want to find somebody that fits you. That's vital. So I always offer a phone call or a video chat where we can get to know each other. And that's generally 20 to 30 minutes long, and there's no fee for that. Then if you decide and I decide, it has to be a mutual agreement, some discernment there, that we might be a good fit in God, then the fee is, and hear this clearly, $25 to $75 an hour, but it is more important that we journey together in God than my fee is met. So if that fee is too high, and I believe most spiritual directors believe this, if that fee is too high, come and let's have a conversation. That's what I always say. Come, let's have a conversation. What can be done? What's doable? It is more important that we journey in God. More important. God takes care of our needs, and that's really a vital piece to understand. So I was thinking like, maybe I could give you an example from my own life, because I've been in spiritual direction now for 10 years, taking spiritual direction. And I remember when I first started with a spiritual director, I had a beautiful lovely, wise woman who journeyed with me. I was also in seminary at the time. I was a brand new SEM student and so excited to be there. So excited to be learning and knowing and all the things that were happening. And I'd been with her I was seeing her about every 2 weeks. I probably had 6 or 7 sessions with her. And she said to me towards the end of one of our sessions, she said, "Are you up for some homework?" Yes, of course I am. I said, I was just, I'm busy being superstar student, right? And she said, "Okay, good, yes." And she said, "I'd like you to practice being last." Last? I'm an Enneagram 3. If you know the Enneagram, 3s are all about efficiency and getting stuff done. That's a 3. I was a corporate executive. I know how to make stuff happen. And I know you don't hold back, you step forward. Those were all the things I knew from the corporate world. And here I was being invited to live out that little tiny verse that says, "The first shall be last and the last shall be first." I remember her saying to me, "I'd like you to be at the end of the line. I'd like you to be the last to speak and not the first. And I'd like you to notice what the view is like from the back of the line." I have to tell you, God has used that in my life for the past 10 years. Not that I'm always last in line, I'm not. But to know that I can be last in line or towards the end and be okay. Because before that, if I wasn't at the front, I felt agitated. And what I now know is that my false self was agitated, not my true self, that inner person that rests in God, but that false self that needs to be first, that needs to be recognized. So that's the type of thing that can happen in spiritual direction. A spiritual director might say, "Hey, are you up for some homework?" They might not. I'm very careful about giving out homework. I want to really honor people's lives. But they are not there to convince you. I am not there to fix you. I'm hardly there to even make suggestions. I am there to listen and watch for God in your life. And that is what we do. So again, if you're interested, explore it. Take it to God. I believe that the person with whom you need, you'll find. There are so many good spiritual directors. So there you have it. That's what I do. I meet with people in my home. I meet with people over the internet. And it is my joy and privilege to walk with people as they walk with God. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.